Alright boys, good evening. Today is Friday and we are doing our chart breakdown. So this right here becomes repetitive, the whole narrative, but that's exactly the point with trading. You get to a point where following the system, the process eventually gets boring. And boring, it's actually a sign of progress, right? It's not a sign of stagnation. Boredom is the final frontier before mastery, right? Because you simply get into the flow of what you do, whatever you are trying to master. For me, it's trading, and you are so detached from the outcome and so focused on following the process that you get into this flow state. And this flow state tends to be repetitive. I mean, you're here every day, getting into your routine, getting into your system, getting into your workflow, and you simply do what you have to do. And in this case, it's for me, it got to a point where I simply wait for edge to be aligned and then I execute on it mechanically, right? While being fully detached from the outcome, just simply acting on my edge and reviewing my edge, reviewing my trades, seeking improvement for my losses, seeking improvement for my overall activity within the markets, right? Improvement of system. I'm using my experiences within the market to improve my system, and that's the way you create a consistently profitable edge, because the environment changes, the markets change. In order for your edge to stay repeatable, relevant, right? In order for your edge to stay relevant, you need to constantly learn from the markets, constantly improve your edge based on the information that's being provided by the markets. Information you can only see if you are detached from the outcome, if you see the markets in an objective way. Because if you are emotionally involved, then you simply won't be able to see that information. Your brain will simply show you whatever you want to see. Like, for instance, if I was a buyer in this case, right? I'm obviously a seller in this case, right? My bias is for shorts. You can see it over and over again on this pair right here. But if I was a buyer, I would have seen this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Beautiful, very strong support level. Price is about to get rejected once again, just as it done there, just as it done there, just as it done there, right? So I'm interested in buying, and that's it, right? I'm blinded. I don't see anything else. All I see is my long thesis and nothing else. And that's because I'm emotionally attached to this idea of buying. Bro, this is so beautiful. Well, you as an individual that wants to become successful must always stress test your ideas. Meaning, upon identifying a setup, yes, you have all of the reasons you are interested in taking that setup, all of the reasons for you having that specific bias, but then you must question that thesis. Bro, okay, so I'm interested in selling because of this, that and that, right? Also the environment, all of this. But what are the complete opposite reasons that indicate this is not a good idea? And this is where AI comes in, right? Because you will want AI to always stress test your ideas, right? Give you reasons for why price shouldn't go in the direction you're anticipating in, right? And then you, as the decision maker, you eventually identify the higher probability, taking in consideration all of those reasons that work against your thesis. So you take those into consideration, you make the proper measurements, you identify the higher probability, you execute on the higher probability, and that's it. Right? It gets repetitive, it gets boring, and that's precisely where mastery is reached. Right? So we have Eurocard once again on the table. Beautiful display. Short. Right, I was pretty much the whole entire week. We managed to take the account from massive drawdown into some profits, which is beautiful, but that's just a natural consequence of following the process, of following the system, right? You need a system well put together, and to find that, to establish that, you need to be, constantly working on the system. But once you have it, you need to follow it ruthlessly, and simply detach from the outcome, right? And your system must contain AI, right? And this applies to pretty much everything. AI is the future. AI is a huge leverage point. A system without AI within it, integrated in it, will simply get outcompeted by somebody who does use AI, right? So you need AI within your system, and I'm actively learning about this when it comes to trading, and when it comes to business, and when it comes to overall efficiency. Right, I'm actively learning about AI, and one way I'm seeing this trading system with AI within it is having multiple agents, right? Each AI agent has a role. For instance, you have an agent that's a chart analyst right beside you, so you give it screenshots. Of course, the technologies will evolve. You will have all sorts of tools available, but my point is that agent itself will analyze charts with you, technical patterns, and that's it, right? Then you have an agent that's a market researcher, right? A fundamental researcher, right? So it's always up to date with fundamental events that have an impact on price action, and it's constantly feeding you these updates, right? The most important ones, the ones that are relevant to your trades, right? It's designed to be that way, right? Then you might have another agent which is helping you improve your system, right? So it's scanning all the data you are gathering, so you have real measurable data, so actual metrics you follow and you note down, and then that AI agent simply goes through, let's say, your last 500 trades, identifying the higher probability ones, identifying the best edge within those setups, right? The best environment in which your edge behaves, the best confluences, which confluences are most relevant within this environment, within this session, on this pair, all of that data, which is actually very useful. So that's another agent. We have 3 agents up until this point. Another agent might be the one I was just mentioning earlier, which is the one that's stress testing your ideas, right? So whenever you have a thesis, for instance, I'm trying to sell here is why, he will give you all of these reasons against your trade, right? And that agent wouldn't have been good for myself around a few months ago, several months ago actually, because I was hesitant right? I was not executing on the trades. That was a big, huge problem for me. And we came along very far from that point, but that was a real problem. So that agent wouldn't have been just adding reasons against my trade, as of I was already doing that, right? I was adding reasons against my trades, but not in an objective way. I was doing it simply because I was fearful, right? Fearful of losing. So my brain was making all of these reasons for me not to enter a trade. Therefore, I wouldn't enter the trade, and price would have went into take profit, right? But the reasons my brain was making up for me not to enter a trade were simply made up by the brain's defense mechanism. It's a complex way our brains work, but just I'm so glad we are over that stage. We are past it, right? So that's beautiful. Cool. So with that being said, let me just stop yapping. So you'll have multiple agents, AI agents, which you will use to, enhance your edge. Not outsource judgment, right? Not outsource execution necessarily. Brother, that was not good. But that's good. So the point is not outsourcing thinking and judgment and execution, but just enhancing it using AI. And that applies not just in trading, but in business, in life, and so on. So, EuroCAD, once again, upon having priced up a 1 to 5 on yesterday's position, we had it reject that strong support in between the two main AOIs once again, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rejections, right? So we had 6 rejections of that support level, very strong support level. But the overall higher time frame thesis was clearly indicating a bearish continuation, right? Weekly was bearish. We had a beautiful rejection of the neckline of the double top, and we were seeing strong bearish momentum building up, right? I was very much anticipating price to close as a big bearish engulfing. Daily time frame had formed a lower low, lower high, break and retest, beautiful break and retest of that AOI before having yesterday reject the AOI, right? Which was yesterday's position, but then it tapped into that support, rejecting it once again, closing as doji with a big lower wick, right? So that's the lower high, high probability for a lower high. So with this trade, I was simply anticipating a continuation, price to form a new higher time frame lower low, and that can just keep going. But since it's Friday, we have decided to take the safest approach and take just the 1 to 2 risk to reward, and that's cool, right? Cool. The 4-hour time frame had shifted structure to bearish, so we had price from this beautiful head and shoulders pattern, very beautiful head, actually textbook head and shoulders pattern, right? Left shoulder, head, right shoulder, beautiful right there. That's the neckline. We had price from a doji with a big upper wick, grabbing liquidity above the right shoulder, rejecting the neckline, rejecting the previous structure point before having the entry signal being provided. Beautiful price action up until this point. 1 hour head and shoulders is also visible on this one, but we have several rejection, and if we take a look at this, it looks like a double bottom, just as it did there, right? Very similar patterns. And so we had, that was just an inducement for buyers, right? Having all of those retail traders think price was about to reject the support once again strongly, forming a double bottom. That's what it looked like. Not the case, right? Obviously you want to trade against the majority. You want to be on the institutional side, so you want to be thinking just as institutions do. And what was the best logical thing for institutions to do on a Friday evening, when we had the big vast majority of traders, retail traders, being buyers, right? Anticipating a rejection of the support once again? Well, the logical thing would be to stop all of those retail traders out, grabbing liquidity, taking profits before the markets closed, right? And that's precisely what the institutions have done, and we were on to that. So simple breakout below the strong support level on which there was a lot of liquidity to be grabbed, a lot of stop losses right there, a lot of stop losses right there, right? A lot of stop losses below that level, a lot of stop losses below that strong support level, right? That way was where the stop losses were. And so we took advantage of this, right? And then we have our entry signal, which was composed by this beautiful 15-minute double top shift of structure right there. We took the trade, as you can see, precisely after having the confirmed shift of structure. Then price had another minor upwards impulse with a single rejecting the neckline before taking off to the downside strongly, right? 15-minute bearish engulfings, minor lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, right? Continuation of the strong bearish trend. And that's beautiful price action right there. Textbook price action. Yeah, lower high, lower low. Right? It's as simple as that. Even though we had several lower weeks, that was once again inducement for buyers. And by the way, that right there, it's liquidity grab, stopping out early breakout sellers. So just as we were, but earlier, prior to having the liquidity grab, prior to having the actual session tap in and all of that, you need to be very much aware, so hyper aware of the environment you are in. We had the liquidity grab, we had the context, right? We had a lot of liquidity below the support. We had all of the higher time frame conferences I have just mentioned, beautiful patterns, beautiful candlestick rejections, beautiful bearish trend. And so all of those reasons were making this trade a very high probability scenario. Beautiful scenario. Now here comes the kicker. Even like this, even with such a setup, beautiful textbook setup in all regards, the setup can still fail. And that's trading, my friend. Right? So you can have everything perfect about a trade, and that trade can still lose. Because trading, it's a game of probabilities, and I've said this over and over again, but I'm really trying to reinforce these beliefs for myself and actually, operate on them. Accept them at a functional level inside my head. That's why I keep on repeating them. One thing is to understand them, and another thing to actually apply them, right? The beliefs I'm talking about. Cool. So, ended off the week in profits, which is good, and we simply keep on following the process, keep on following the system, which includes constant improvement, of course, and adaptability, which is the key word, especially in the AI future. For now, this has been Shoni. Keep on striving for greatness, brother, because you are meant for it, and absolutely nothing less.